You smell the bread before you see the bakery. It's still dark, maybe an hour before sunrise, and the ovens have been running all night. The heat spills into the street. Flour dust hangs in the air like fog. Someone's already lining up clay jars of olive oil outside the door, and the baker's apprentice is pulling flat loaves out of a stone oven with a long wooden paddle, one after another, faster than you can count. This is happening in 40 different neighborhoods right now, maybe more. And by the time the sun is fully up, most of this bread will be gone. You're in Rome, not the Rome of marble temples and emperors' palaces. That's later, that's the postcard version. Right now, you're in the part of the city where most people actually live. And the thing you notice first, before the crowds or the noise or the smell of the Tiber River, is that everyone here is eating. Constantly. Buying food, carrying food, arguing about food, selling food out of windows and doorways and carts that shouldn't be here during the day but are anyway. Because here's the thing no one tells you about ancient Rome. It doesn't grow its own food, almost none of it. A city of 1 million people, and the grain comes from Egypt. The olive oil comes from Spain. The wine comes from Gaul. And somehow, every single day, all of it has to get here, get distributed, get sold, get eaten. And then the whole system has to reset and do it again tomorrow. If it stops, people starve. Not eventually. Within days. So the question is whether Rome was powerful. It's how they fed 1 million people every single day using wooden ships and dirt roads and no refrigeration. You're standing near the Tiber now, just south of the Forum Boarium, the cattle market. The river is wide here, brownish-green, full of boats. Barges mostly. Flat, heavy, sitting low in the water. They're unloading grain. The grain didn't start here. It started in Egypt or North Africa, loaded onto massive cargo ships that can carry 1,000 tons at a time. Those ships are too big to navigate the Tiber, so they stop at Ostia, Rome's port city, 16 miles downstream. The grain gets transferred to river barges, smaller, uglier, but they can make the trip upriver. And right now, you're watching one of them getting unloaded, sack by sack, onto the docks. The men doing the unloading are contractors, specially licensed by the state. They don't own the grain. The emperor does, or the state does. It's the same thing, really. This isn't a private market. This is the annona, the grain supply. And it's the most important logistical operation in the entire empire, because if this fails, Rome riots. The sacks are heavy, clay seals still intact to prove no one skimmed anything on the journey. They get carried into the Horia, the state warehouses, just up the hill. You can see them from here. Long stone buildings with narrow windows and iron doors. They're fireproofed as much as anything in Rome can be. Inside, it's dark and cool, and the grain is stored in huge clay jars, sealed with wax. Some of it will sit there for months. Some of it will be distributed by the end of the week. The emperor gives out free grain to around 200,000 men. Citizens, heads of households. You show up once a month with your token, your tessera, and you get your ration. Enough to feed a family if you're careful. It's not generosity, it's survival, yours and his. Because a city this size can't function on market prices alone. When the price of bread spikes, people don't just complain. They gather. They march to the Forum. They start throwing stones at government buildings. It's happened before. So the emperor controls the supply. He buys the grain directly from Egypt, ships it at state expense, stores it in state warehouses, and hands it out, free, every month. No one calls it socialism. They call it civilization. But here's what surprised me. The free grain isn't bread. It's just grain, wheat mostly, which means you still have to grind it into flour, mix it with water, shape it, and bake it. And most people in Rome don't have kitchens. You're back in the Suburra now, one of the densest neighborhoods in the city. Apartment blocks instantly 5, 6 stories tall, leaning into each other like they're exhausted. The ground floors are shops and taverns. Above that, people live in single rooms, maybe 2 if they're lucky. No plumbing above the first floor. No windows, just shutters. And no ovens. If you live on the 4th floor of an insula, you're not baking bread. You're not cooking much of anything, because open flames in a wooden building full of people is how entire blocks burn down. So you take your grain to a public mill. There are hundreds of them scattered across the city, and you pay a small fee to have it ground. Then you take the flour to a bakery and you pay another fee to have it baked. Or you just buy bread directly, which is what most people do. There's a Pastrina, a commercial bakery, on almost every major street. You can hear them before you see them. The grinding stones are loud. They're big, waist-high, hourglass-shaped volcanic stone, and they're turned by donkeys walking in circles all day, every day. The donkeys are blindfolded so they don't get dizzy. The grain goes in the top, gets crushed between the stones, and comes out the bottom as flour. The ovens are in the back, wood-fired, big enough to bake dozens of loaves at once. The bakers work in shifts. Some start at midnight so the bread is ready by dawn. The loaves are round, flat, scored into wedges so you can break them apart. Some have stamps, marks from the bakery, proof of where they came from. If there's a problem, if someone gets sick, if the weights are off, they can trace it back. The state regulates this. Weights, prices, quality. It has to, because if the bread supply breaks, the city breaks. You're walking now, moving west toward the Forum Halatorium, the vegetable market. It's mid-morning and the space is packed. Stalls line both sides of the street, spilling into the road. People are selling onions, lentils, cabbage, turnips, garum, that fermented fish sauce Romans put on everything. There's a guy selling live chickens. Another selling cheeses wrapped in cloth. A woman is arguing about the price of olives. This isn't the grain dole. This is the real market, the private market, and it's huge. Because even with free grain, people still need to eat other things. Vegetables, protein, fat, salt, flavor. Most of it comes from outside the city. The vegetables come from farms in the countryside, small plots, family-run, just a few miles beyond the city walls. Every morning, farmers load carts and walk their produce into the city. It's slow. It's inefficient. But it works because the demand is constant and the city is close enough that nothing spoils before it sells. The olive oil comes from further away. Spain mostly. North Africa. Shipped in huge clay jars, amphorae, stacked in the cargo holds of merchant ships. When the jars are empty, they get smashed and dumped. There's a hill in Rome, Monte Testaccio, made entirely of broken pottery. Olive oil jars stacked and shattered layer after layer, decades of Mediterranean trade compressed into a mound you can climb. The wine comes from everywhere: Gaul, Campania, Greece. It arrives in amphorae too, but it's sold by the cup in taverns and popini, food stalls built into the walls of buildings. You don't drink wine straight. You mix it with water, sometimes honey, sometimes seawater, which sounds insane until you realize it's just salt and you don't have a lot of other options for preserving things. And the fish, most of it comes from the coast, salted or dried or turned into garum. Fresh fish is rare unless you're rich. Garum is everywhere. It's made from fish guts, salt, and thyme. You pack it into jars, leave it in the sun for weeks, let it ferment until it's liquid. It smells awful while it's fermenting, but the finished product, it's salty, savory, rich. You put it on bread, vegetables, meat. It's the Roman version of soy sauce, and they're obsessed with it. You cut through a narrow alley and come out near the Circus Maximus, the chariot track. It's empty right now, no races today, but you can still see the scale of it. A quarter-mile long, seating for 150,000 people. That's 15% of the entire city, all in one place, watching horses run in circles. But here's the thing. The circus isn't just entertainment, it's distribution. On race days, the emperor sometimes hands out free food. Bread, wine, sometimes meat. You come for the spectacle, you leave with dinner. It's strategic. You can't police a crowd that size, so you feed it. You give it something to cheer for. You make the empire feel abundant, inevitable, generous. And most of the time it works. But feeding a crowd of 150,000 for one day is a logistical nightmare. Feeding a city of 1 million every day is something else entirely. It only works because every part of the system is synchronized. The ships from Egypt arrive on schedule. The barges move upriver. The warehouses store the grain. The mills grind it. The bakeries bake it. The markets sell the vegetables. The taverns sell the wine. If any one of those steps breaks, the whole city feels it by sundown. And it's not just food, it's water. You're walking uphill now toward the Esquiline. You pass a fountain, one of hundreds scattered across the city. It's always running, always cold. People are filling clay jugs, leather bags, whatever they brought. There's no line, you just wait your turn. The water comes from the aqueducts. 11 of them by the 2nd century, feeding the city from springs in the mountains, 30, 40, 50 miles away. They don't pump, they fall, just slightly. A gradient so subtle you never notice it on foot, but over dozens of miles, it's enough to pull millions of gallons of water downhill into the city every single day. The aqueducts are engineering, but they're also political. Building one takes years, decades sometimes. It costs a fortune. But the emperor who finishes it gets his name carved into stone, and every time someone fills a jug at a fountain, they're using his water. It's a gift, a reminder the empire provides. Most of the water goes to the public baths. There are hundreds of small ones and a few massive complexes, Trajans, Caracalas, Diocletians, that can hold over 1,000 people at once. You pay almost nothing to get in. Sometimes nothing at all. Inside there are cold pools, warm pools, hot pools, steam rooms, massage rooms, exercise yards, libraries even in the bigger complexes. It's not just about getting clean, it's social infrastructure. You go to the baths because that's where people are. Where you hear news, make deals, see friends, waste an afternoon. And it only works because the water never stops. The aqueducts feed the baths drain into the sewers drain into the Tiber. It's a circuit. If the aqueduct breaks, the baths close. And when the baths close, people notice. You're moving south now through streets that are narrower, darker, louder. You pass a popina, a food stall built into the wall of an insula. The counter is stone, with big clay pots sunk into it, keeping stew and wine warm over a low fire. A man is eating chickpeas with his hands. Another is buying a sausage. There's no seating. You eat standing up or you take it with you. Most people in Rome eat like this. Twice a day, maybe 3 times. Breakfast is bread, maybe dipped in wine. Lunch is something fast. Lentils, porridge, vegetables, a piece of fish if you can afford it. Dinner is more of the same. Meat is rare unless you're wealthy or it's a festival day. You eat what's available, what's cheap, what's close. And it's easy to forget, walking through the markets and the bakeries and the fountains, that this whole system is fragile. It depends on ships that don't sink, roads that don't flood, governors in Egypt who don't rebel, bakers who don't hoard, millers who don't overcharge. The state watches all of it. Inspectors check weights. Soldiers guard the warehouses. Price controls get enforced, sometimes violently. Because if people think the system is rigged, if they think someone's getting rich while they go hungry, they stop believing in the empire. And belief is the only thing holding a city this size together. It's late afternoon now. The sun is lower, the streets are even more crowded. You're near the Porticus Aemilia, a massive warehouse complex near the river. It's over 1,500 feet long. Rows and columns, stone arches. Inside, it's dim and cool, and the air smells like grain and wood and clay. This is where some of the imported goods get stored before they're distributed. Olive oil, wine, grain that didn't go to the state warehouses, garum by the barrel. There are workers everywhere, porters carrying amphorae, scribes checking manifests, guards watching the doors. This isn't just commerce. It's the circulatory system of an empire. Every jar, every sack, every barrel represents a ship that crossed the Mediterranean, a farmer who grew something, a merchant who paid for transport, a buyer who needs it by tomorrow. And all of it flows through Rome because Rome is the center, the mouth, the machine that consumes the production of 3 continents and turns it into a city. And here's the scale shock moment, the thing that doesn't quite fit in your head until you see it all at once. Rome consumed 1,500 tons of grain every day, every single day. That's 40 shiploads a month minimum just for the grain dole. Add in the private market and you're looking at hundreds of ships a year, all converging on Ostia, all feeding one city. No other city in the ancient world came close. Alexandria had maybe 500,000 people. Antioch maybe 200,000. Rome had 1,000,000 and it didn't produce anything. It didn't grow food, it didn't mine resources, it imported everything. And it worked for centuries because the empire was organized around keeping this one city alive. Every road led to Rome, but more importantly, every ship did too. You're back near the Forum now. The light is fading. The markets are closing. People are heading home or to the baths or to a tavern. The streets are still full. They're always full. You pass a bakery, doors closed, but you can still smell the bread. Tomorrow morning, it'll start again. The ovens will fire up in the dark. The mills will grind. The barges will unload. The fountains will run. And 1,000,000 people will wake up expecting to eat. There's no backup plan. No surplus stored for emergencies, not really. Rome lives day to day, shipment to shipment. The whole system assumes that Egypt will keep sending grain, that the weather will cooperate, that the ships won't sink, that the bakers will bake, that the aqueducts won't break. It's efficient. It's brilliant. It's also terrifying because if any one of those assumptions fails, the city doesn't have a week. It has days. And you think, how long can something like this keep going? Rome didn't know the answer. It just kept feeding itself, kept moving, kept believing the ships would come. And for a long time they did. But standing here, listening to the city hum in the near dark, you can't help but wonder, what happens the day they do?